7 people, one stage, millions of hearts moved every single time they perform. But before the world knew them as BTS, before the sold-out stadiums and record-breaking albums, there was something or someone that made their hearts race for the very first time. This isn't about scandals. This isn't cheap gossip. This is about the most honest moment in each of their lives. First love. One of them fell in love with an object that couldn't even speak back. Another found love in a place he never planned to be, and one nearly lost everything precisely because he loved too much. Each of the 7 members has told this story themselves, through songs, through interviews, through tears on stage. The question is simple. Do you actually know what their first love was? Not what fans assumed, not what the media guessed, but what came directly from their own mouths. From a worn-out piano in an empty room to a dream they almost buried alive, these are 7 first love stories from BTS that you may have never heard in full.
Number 7. The boy who danced before he could rap, J-Hope. In Gwangju, South Korea's 6th largest city, tucked in the southwestern corner of the peninsula, a kid named Jung Hoseok discovered something in the early 2000s that would rearrange every plan his family ever had for him. It wasn't a person, it wasn't a place, it was a movement, literally. Dance walked into his life and never left. Gwangju wasn't Seoul. It didn't have the giant entertainment agencies, the polished training centers, or the dense network of industry scouts combing the streets for the next big idol. What it did have was a thriving underground dance culture. Street dance crews practiced in community centers, in parks, in any open space they could claim after dark. Popping, locking, b-boying, freestyle. Gwangju's dance scene was raw and competitive, and it ran almost entirely on passion because there was no money in it. This was the world young Hoseok stumbled into, and the moment he saw dancers move to music in ways he'd never imagined a human body could, something clicked inside him that he's never been able to fully explain in interviews, only that it felt permanent. He enrolled in a dance academy in Gwangju. Not a casual weekend hobby class, a serious training ground where students drilled technique for hours. Hoseok didn't just attend, he consumed it. He practiced until the mirrors fogged up. He studied choreography the way other kids studied for school exams. Street dance became his language before he ever learned to rap a single bar, before he ever imagined standing in front of a microphone. His body was his instrument, and he tuned it obsessively. Within a few years, Hoseok had built a reputation in Gwangju's dance community that extended beyond his age group. He entered dance competitions and won. The specifics that have been confirmed in BTS's own content and interviews, he placed first in a national dance competition, a feat significant enough that it put his name on the radar of people outside Gwangju. For a teenager from a non-Seoul city with zero connections to the entertainment industry, winning at a national level in street dance was the equivalent of a neon sign flashing above his head. He wasn't just good, he was undeniable. But here's the part most fans don't fully appreciate about J-Hope's origin. He was never supposed to be a rapper. He was never supposed to sing. He was a dancer. Period. Full stop. That was the beginning, middle, and end of his identity. When Big Hit Entertainment held auditions and Hoseok showed up, he walked in as a dancer looking for a stage, not a trainee looking to become an idol in the traditional sense. He could move in ways that made people stop and watch. That was his pitch. That was his entire resume. Big Hit signed him, but Big Hit didn't need another dancer who only danced. They were building a hip-hop group. They needed rappers. They needed people who could write lyrics, deliver verses with conviction, command a mic the same way Hoseok commanded a dance floor. So the company made a decision that would fundamentally alter his life's trajectory. They told him to learn how to rap. Think about what that means for a moment.
Hoseok had spent his entire adolescence mastering one craft. He'd poured thousands of hours into street dance, the thing he loved, the thing that defined him, the thing he was already elite at. And now he was being told that wasn't enough. He needed to start over in a completely different discipline, from zero, surrounded by trainees like Kim Namjoon, who had been rapping since middle school and already built underground credibility. The gap between where Hoseok was as a rapper and where he needed to be was enormous, and he had to close it while simultaneously keeping his dance skills sharp enough to justify his position. The trainee period at Big Hit was grueling by every account the members have shared. The company was small, the budget was tight, the future was uncertain, and at some point during those years, Hoseok nearly didn't make it. This has been confirmed multiple times in BTS's own documentaries and interviews. There was a real moment when J-Hope almost left Big Hit. The details vary depending on which account you reference, but the core truth remains consistent. The pressure, the uncertainty, and the difficulty of transforming from a pure dancer into a well-rounded idol pushed him to a breaking point. He considered walking away from the entire thing.
His mother played a critical role during this period. Jung Hoseok has spoken about his mother with a tenderness that he reserves for almost no other subject. She supported his dream when it made no financial sense. She believed in his path when there was zero evidence it would lead anywhere stable. Years later, on BTS's 2016 album Wings, Hoseok released a solo track called Mama. It wasn't a generic tribute. It was a specific, personal accounting of what his mother sacrificed and what her faith meant to him during the darkest stretch of his trainee life. The song laid it out plainly. Without her, there would be no J-Hope. Not because she pushed him, but because she held the door open when everyone else, including at times himself, was ready to close it. He stayed, he learned to rap, and he didn't just learn, he became genuinely good at it. Not in a dancer who can also sort of rap way, but in a way that earned him real respect within BTS's rap line alongside RM and Suga. His delivery style was different from theirs, brighter, more rhythmic, shaped by the same sense of tempo and timing that made his dance so precise. He brought a musician's body awareness to his vocal performance. Every breath, every syllable, every pause was choreographed with the same attention he gave to physical movement. But dance never stopped being the core of who he was. Even as BTS rose from a small company group to the biggest act on the planet, J-Hope's identity remained rooted in the thing that first captured him in Gwangju. Watch any BTS performance closely and you'll notice Hoseok is almost always the sharpest dancer on stage. His isolations are cleaner, his transitions are smoother, his energy management across a 2-hour concert is almost mechanical in its efficiency. This isn't natural talent coasting on stage presence. This is the product of a kid who started drilling fundamentals in a Gwangju dance academy before he was old enough to understand what a career in entertainment even looked like. In March 2018, he released his mixtape, Hope World, and it debuted at number 63 on the Billboard 200, eventually climbing to number 38. At the time, that made Hoseok the highest-charting Korean solo artist in Billboard 200 history, a street dancer from Gwangju on the Billboard 200. The kid who walked into Big Hit unable to rap a single verse had just charted higher than Korean solo artists who'd been in the music industry for decades. In July 2022, he went further with Jack in the Box, his first official solo album. The lead single, More, and the title track, Arson, weren't safe pop songs designed for mass radio play. They were aggressive, genre-bending tracks rooted in old-school hip-hop and punk energy. Hoseok wasn't trying to prove he could be a solo artist. He was proving he could be an artist on his own terms, terms shaped by the same fearlessness that made him throw his body into street dance battles as a teenager with nothing to lose. In April 2023, he enlisted for mandatory military service, serving as an active-duty soldier. He completed his service and was discharged in October 2024, returning to a world that had only grown more eager to see what he would do next. Here's the thing about J-Hope's first love story that makes it different from a simple boy finds passion narrative. He was asked to betray it, not abandon it, betray it. He was told that dance alone wasn't enough.
He was told to become something else. And instead of resenting that demand, he absorbed it. He added rapping to his arsenal without subtracting dance from his identity. He became both. He became more. But if you ever watch him in an unguarded moment, during a rehearsal, during a sound check, during those seconds right before the music starts and his body instinctively locks into position, you can still see it. The first love, the original thing, the movement that found a boy in Gwangju and never let go. And if J-Hope's first love was a discipline that nearly cost him everything he'd built, the next member's first love was something far more personal, something that didn't just shape his art, but reshaped who he was at the deepest level.
Number 6. The genius who chose words over grades. RM. Kim Namjoon was not supposed to become a rapper. By every conventional measure available in South Korean society, a society that treats academic performance with the seriousness other cultures reserve for professional sports, he was supposed to become something safe, something respectable, something his parents could explain to relatives at Chuseok without getting sidewise glances. Because Namjoon wasn't just a good student, he was an exceptional one. His IQ was tested at 148, a number he didn't publicize himself, but that surfaced on Korean variety shows and has since become part of his public profile. His scores on national standardized exams placed him in the top percentile of the country. In Ilsan, the satellite city of Seoul in Gyeonggi province where he grew up, Kim Namjoon was the kid teachers pointed to when they wanted to show other students what potential looked like. But potential, as it turned out, was exactly the problem, because Namjoon's potential wasn't pointing toward a university lecture hall or a corporate career. It was pointing somewhere else entirely, somewhere that had nothing to do with test scores and everything to do with words. His first love was language. Not language as a school subject, not grammar drills and vocabulary lists. Language as a living, breathing thing that could make people feel something. He was a reader before he was anything else, the kind of kid who consumed books not because he was told to, but because he physically couldn't stop. Literature became his first window into the idea that words, arranged in the right order, could alter the way a person sees the world. Korean literature, translated works, poetry, essays, Namjoon absorbed it all. And the more he read, the more he understood something that would eventually define his entire career. Words are not just tools for communication, they're tools for power. Then, two things happened that cracked his life wide open. The first was an American sitcom called Friends. Namjoon's mother, recognizing her son's aptitude for language, began watching the show with him as an English study method. Not a tutor, not an academy. A 90s sitcom about 6 people in New York. Namjoon watched it over and over, absorbing not just vocabulary and grammar, but rhythm, cadence, the way English sounds when people actually speak it rather than read it from a textbook. He has confirmed this story multiple times across interviews. His English, which would later allow Namjoon to represent BTS on the global stage, deliver speeches at the United Nations, and conduct press conferences without a translator, was built substantially on the foundation of Ross, Rachel, Chandler, Monica, Joey, and Phoebe. No formal immersion program, no study abroad, a television show, and relentless repetition. The second thing was Epic High. Epic High was a Korean hip-hop group led by Tablo, a Stanford-educated rapper and producer who brought literary sophistication to Korean rap at a time when the genre was still carving out its identity in the mainstream. When Namjoon heard their music, and he's pointed to this moment specifically in interviews as a turning point, something happened that went beyond simply liking a song. He recognized for the first time that everything he loved about words and books could exist in music, that rap was literature set to a beat, that the same precision and emotional architecture he admired in written prose could be delivered out loud in real time to a room full of people. It wasn't just art, it was the specific intersection of every skill he'd been unconsciously building since childhood.
He started rapping. Not casually, not as a hobby between study sessions. He started rapping seriously, adopting the stage name Runch Randa and immersing himself in South Korea's underground hip-hop scene while still a teenager. The underground scene in Korea during that era operated like an unofficial apprenticeship system. Open mic nights, small clubs, online forums where aspiring rappers uploaded tracks and got critiqued harshly by peers who had no reason to be kind. Namjoon entered this world and didn't just survive it, he earned respect. His wordplay was sharper than what people expected from a kid his age. His vocabulary, sharpened by years of obsessive reading, gave him a toolbox most teenage rappers simply didn't have. And this is where the story takes the turn that made BTS possible.
Namjoon's work in the underground scene reached Bang Si-hyuk, the producer and founder of Big Hit Entertainment. Bang Si-hyuk had been working in the Korean music industry for years, primarily as a composer and producer for major acts. He'd recently started his own company with ambitions to create a hip-hop idol group, a concept that was considered almost contradictory at the time, since idol culture and hip-hop culture in Korea occupied separate and often hostile territories. When Bang Si-hyuk heard Namjoon's material, he recognized exactly what he'd been looking for: a teenage rapper with genuine underground credibility, intellectual depth, and enough raw charisma to anchor an entire group. Namjoon became the first member signed to what would eventually become BTS. Not one of the first, the first. BTS was built around him. Every subsequent member was recruited to complement the foundation he provided. When people say RM is the leader of BTS, they don't just mean he speaks first in interviews or makes group decisions. They mean the group literally would not exist without him. He is the architectural origin point. But choosing Big Hit meant choosing against everything his academic record had been building toward, and his parents felt that weight. Namjoon has spoken about this tension openly. His mother and father weren't hostile to his dream, but they understood the math. His son had the kind of test scores that could open doors to Korea's top universities: Seoul National, Yonsei, Korea University, the institutions that in Korean society function almost like guarantees of a stable future. And he was telling them he wanted to rap, in a small company, with no track record, in an industry where the vast majority of trainees never debuted, and the vast majority of those who debut never succeed. He chose music anyway, and he did it knowing exactly what he was risking, because he was smart enough to calculate the odds himself. The years that followed validated the gamble in ways that neither Namjoon nor anyone around him could have predicted. But what's often overlooked in the BTS success story is that RM's artistic identity never drifted from its origin. His first love, language, words, the act of arranging meaning, remained the engine underneath everything. His lyrics for BTS are dense with literary references, philosophical questions, and emotional specificity that goes beyond standard pop songwriting. He's referenced Hermann Hesse, Ursula Le Guin, Haruki Murakami, and numerous other authors in his work and public reading lists. He didn't just carry his love of literature into his music career, he made it inseparable from his identity as an artist. His solo releases tracked this evolution precisely. His first mixtape, RM, released in 2015, was aggressive and technically ambitious, a rapper proving he belonged. His second mixtape, Mono, released in 2018, was the opposite: soft, introspective, melancholy, dealing with loneliness and the strange dislocation of being world-famous, yet emotionally isolated. It felt less like a rap project and more like a poetry collection set to ambient production. Mono debuted at number 26 on the Billboard 200, a contemplative, almost whispered album from a Korean artist, charting above releases from established Western acts. Then came Indigo in December 2022, his first official solo album, which he described as an archive of his 20s. It featured collaborations with artists across genres: Erykah Badu, Anderson .Paak, Eugene, and read like a man taking inventory of everything he'd experienced and felt over a decade of relentless public life. Namjoon enlisted for mandatory military service in December 2023 and was discharged in June 2025, returning to civilian life with characteristically little fanfare. Throughout all of it, the albums, the UN speeches, the stadium tours, the military service, one thing remained constant. Kim Namjoon is, before anything else, a person in love with words. He fell in love with them in books as a child in Ilsan. He heard them transformed into music through Epic High as a teenager. He built an entire career, and inadvertently an entire global movement, on the belief that the right words, delivered with honesty, can change the way people see themselves. His first love wasn't a person, a place, or even music in the abstract. It was the specific, almost physical thrill of finding the exact right word for the exact right moment, and he's still chasing it. But if RM's first love was the precision of language, the next member's first love was something far less cerebral and far more physical, a love that pushed his body to the edge and nearly broke it before BTS ever existed.
Number 5. The top student who almost destroyed himself. Jimin. In the Gumjeong district of Busan, South Korea's second-largest city, Park Jimin didn't stumble into dance the way most kids stumble into hobbies. He didn't take a Saturday class because his parents thought it would be a nice extracurricular. He pursued it with the kind of single-minded intensity that, in a different context, people would call obsession. And his obsession had a very specific name: contemporary dance. Not hip-hop, not street dance, not the sharp, beat-driven choreography that dominates K-pop stages. Contemporary, the form built on fluidity, emotional expression, and the idea that a human body, without saying a single word, can tell a story that language can't. This distinction matters more than most people realize, because contemporary dance occupies a completely different universe from idol performance. Contemporary is rooted in modern dance traditions: Martha Graham, Merce Cunningham, Pina Bausch, disciplines where technique serves emotion, where the point isn't to look impressive, but to make the audience feel something they didn't expect to feel. It's the kind of dance that gets performed in theaters and arts festivals, not on music show stages. It requires a different kind of body control, a different relationship with music, and a fundamentally different understanding of what movement is for. Jimin didn't just dabble in this world, he dominated it. He enrolled at Busan High School of Arts, one of South Korea's specialized arts institutions where admission is competitive and the curriculum is designed to produce professional artists, not hobbyists. Jimin entered the modern dance department. And he didn't just get in, he became the top student, #1 in his department. In a school full of talented young dancers who had all been screened through rigorous auditions, Park Jimin stood at the top. His technique was precise. His expressiveness was unusual for someone his age. His teachers recognized something in him that went beyond discipline. He had an instinct for translating internal emotion into physical form that couldn't be taught. You could teach someone to extend their leg correctly. You couldn't teach them to make an audience hold their breath while they did it. It was one of those teachers that changed the entire direction of his life. Jimin's dance instructor at Busan Arts High recommended that he audition for Big Hit Entertainment. Not because contemporary dance was a dead end. Jimin had a legitimate path toward a professional career in contemporary performance, but because the teacher saw something in him that could translate to a wider stage. Jimin auditioned. Big Hit accepted him. And here's the detail that separates Jimin's story from every other member of BTS. He was the last one to join the trainee lineup. By the time Park Jimin arrived at Big Hit's training facility, the other members had already been training together for months, some for years. RM had been there the longest. Suga, J-Hope, Jin, Taehyung, and Jungkook, they'd all had time to bond, to learn the company's systems, to develop their skills within the specific framework Big Hit demanded.
Jimin walked into a group that was already taking shape and had to find his place in it with a fraction of the preparation time everyone else had received. And his preparation gap wasn't just about type, it was about type. Jimin's entire training had been in contemporary dance. Big Hit needed idol performers, people who could execute synchronized choreography, rap or sing, maintain energy across a full concert set, and perform on camera for music shows. Contemporary dance shares almost none of these requirements. The movement vocabulary is different. The relationship to the beat is different. The performance context is different. Jimin essentially had to unlearn certain instincts that contemporary dance had drilled into him and simultaneously learn an entirely new set of skills from near zero, all while catching up to members who were already ahead of him. And he attacked this problem the only way he knew how, by working harder than anyone in the room. And this is where the story takes a darker turn, because Jimin's work ethic, which is the thing that made him the top student at Busan Arts High, also became the thing that nearly broke him. Jimin has been open, painfully, uncomfortably open, about the physical and psychological toll of his early years at Big Hit and the first chapters of BTS's career. He restricted his eating severely. In BTS's own content, including their documentary series, he's discussed periods where he barely ate, pushing his body to extremes that had nothing to do with health and everything to do with a perfectionism so deeply embedded that he couldn't distinguish between discipline and self-destruction.
In contemporary dance, the body is the canvas. Every line, every angle, every silhouette matters. Jimin carried that standard into idol life and amplified it under the pressure of being on camera, being compared to other idols, and being scrutinized by an industry and a fandom that, especially in the early 2010s, could be ruthlessly critical about physical appearance. The other members noticed. They've talked about it. They worried about him. There were periods where Jimin's restriction was visible enough that it became a point of concern within the group, not just a personal struggle hidden behind closed doors. This wasn't a manufactured storyline. This was a young man who loved his craft so much that he was willing to damage himself to meet a standard that existed mostly in his own head. But here's what makes Jimin's story something more than a cautionary tale. The very thing that nearly destroyed him is also the thing that makes him irreplaceable. Watch any BTS performance and focus on Jimin. His movement quality is categorically different from the other members. It's not better or worse, it's different in kind. When BTS executes a group choreography, 6 members are performing the choreography. Jimin is inhabiting it. His transitions are softer, his extensions are longer. His control in slow movements, the moments where most dancers lose their expressiveness because there's nothing flashy to hide behind, is where he becomes almost impossible to look away from. That's not idol training. That's contemporary dance training layered underneath idol technique. It's the thing that makes audiences who know nothing about dance still feel something different when they watch him perform, even if they can't articulate what it is. His solo stages became the clearest expression of this duality. Lie, his solo track on the Wings album, was accompanied during live performances by a contemporary dance piece that looked nothing like anything else happening on a BTS stage. It was raw, anguished, technically demanding in ways that only trained dancers could fully appreciate, and emotionally exposed in ways that made even casual viewers uncomfortable, in the best sense of possible. He wasn't performing a K-pop solo. He was performing a contemporary dance work that happened to take place inside a K-pop concert. The two worlds he'd been straddling since he left Busan finally merged into something singular. Serendipity, his solo from the Love Yourself, Her album, moved in the opposite direction. Soft, ethereal, controlled, but still carried that same contemporary DNA. Every gesture was intentional. Every breath was placed. The song was gentle, but the physical performance underneath it required a level of body control that most professional dancers spend decades trying to achieve. In March 2023, Jimin released his first solo album, Face.
It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, and the single, Like Crazy, hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making him the first Korean solo artist to top that chart. The kid from Busan Arts High who showed up to Big Hit last with the wrong kind of dance training and the shortest preparation window had just achieved something no Korean solo artist had ever done before. He enlisted for military service in December 2023 and was discharged in June 2025. In July 2024, while still serving, his second solo album, Muse, was released, with the single Who becoming a global hit that dominated streaming charts and proved that his audience wasn't a temporary phenomenon tied to BTS's group momentum, it was his. Park Jimin's first love was contemporary dance. It was the thing that made him extraordinary and the thing that nearly unmade him. It gave him a physical vocabulary no other idol possesses, and a perfectionism that unchecked turned inward like a blade. He spent his entire career navigating the tension between those two truths, the beauty and the cost of loving something so completely that you're willing to let it consume you. He never stopped being a contemporary dancer. He just found a stage big enough for the world to finally see what his teacher in Busan saw all those years ago. And if Jimin's first love carved itself into his body, the next member's first love carved itself into something even harder to see, his sense of identity, in ways that would take years to fully understand.
Number 4, the farm boy who picked up a saxophone, Taehyung. Before he became V of BTS, Kim Taehyung's future seemed largely predetermined by the geography of his upbringing. He was born in Daegu, but raised primarily in Jeocheong, a rural county in South Gyeongsang Province defined by agriculture, quiet orchards, and mountain landscapes. For roughly 14 years of his childhood, Taehyung lived under the care of his paternal grandparents while his parents worked long hours to support the family. Life in Jeocheong moved at a deliberate pace. The expectation was simple. You grew up, helped on the family farm, and led a modest, predictable life. Taehyung himself repeatedly stated in early interviews that had he not encountered music, he fully expected to spend his adult life as a farmer. That path began to shift not because of a sudden desire for fame, but because of a practical conversation with his father. Taehyung's father, whom he has frequently cited as his ultimate role model, gave his son a straightforward piece of advice. If he wanted to pursue a career in music or entertainment, he needed to learn at least one instrument thoroughly. He didn't tell his son to become a star. He told him to acquire a tangible skill. Taehyung chose the saxophone. It was not a trendy choice for a middle school student in the late 2000s. While his peers were listening to electronic pop and learning urban dance routines, Taehyung spent 3 years drilling classic woodwind technique. He learned breath control, finger positioning, scale structures, and tone production on an instrument that demanded discipline and physical lung capacity. He took it seriously enough to enter local competitions, eventually winning a top award in a regional contest in Gyeongsang Province. For 3 years, the saxophone was his primary medium of expression. He wasn't aiming for a K-pop agency. He was aiming to become a professional saxophonist or study music at a specialized high school. Then came the summer of 2011, and an event that reads like fiction but is fully documented in Big Hit's corporate history. A friend of Taehyung's decided to audition for Big Hit Entertainment, which was holding regional auditions in Daegu. Taehyung tagged along strictly as moral support. He had no appointment, no prepared performance, and no intention of standing in front of the judges. He was simply standing in the hallway of the audition venue, waiting for his friend to finish. A member of Big Hit's scouting team noticed him. In an industry where talent scouts process thousands of faces a year, Taehyung's visual proportion and distinct presence stood out instantly. The recruiter approached him in the hallway and asked if he would consider auditioning. Taehyung hesitated. He didn't have his parents' permission. He called his father from the hallway, got approval, and walked into the audition room on the spot. He didn't have a backing track prepared. He danced spontaneously, rapped a brief snippet, and demonstrated his rhythm. The judges asked if he could do anything else. He improvised impersonations. Out of all the hundreds of hopefuls who auditioned in Daegu that day, Kim Taehyung was the only person who passed. He moved to Seoul to join Big Hit as a trainee in the summer of 2011, leaving Jeocheong behind. But his introduction to the company brought a psychological trial that none of the other 6 members experienced. Big Hit decided to make Taehyung their secret member, while the rest of the trainees, RM, Suga, J-Hope, Jeon, Jimin, and Jungkook, were gradually revealed to the public through blog posts, cover songs, and social media updates building up to their debut. Taehyung was kept completely invisible. The strategic intent from Big Hit management was to hold him as a hidden weapon, a visual and vocal surprise to generate maximum impact upon launch. The human reality for a teenager living that strategy was vastly different. For nearly 2 years, Taehyung lived in the same dorms, trained the exact same hours, and ate the same meals as the rest of BTS. But whenever the group filmed content for fans, he had to step out of the frame. When the members shot logs in their small studio room, Taehyung stood off to the side, hidden behind the camera or sitting near a trash bin in the hallway, watching his teammates talk to an audience he wasn't allowed to address. He has spoken candidly about the profound isolation of that period. He recalled watching the other members upload videos and read fan comments, wondering if he would ever actually be allowed to debut, or if he would be cut from the group without the world ever knowing he had been there at all. In late May 2013, just weeks before BTS's official debut on June 13th, Big Hit finally released his teaser photograph. When fans saw the final member, the response was immediate, but the emotional scar of those invisible months took time to heal. Musically, Taehyung presented Big Hit with both a unique asset and a technical puzzle. In an industry dominated by crisp tenors and high-register male vocals, Taehyung possessed a rich, deep baritone. His natural vocal range sat significantly lower than the pop arrangements standard in Korean idol music. In the group's early hip-hop tracks, his voice was utilized primarily for aggressive, gritty lines, such as his raspy delivery on Boy in Love. However, as BTS evolved, Taehyung developed his lower register into one of the most stylistically distinct vocal signatures in modern Korean music. He gravitated toward jazz, neo-soul, and classic pop standards, genres that directly connected back to the melodic sensibilities he had cultivated while playing the saxophone years earlier. His solo tracks within BTS reflected this distinct lineage. Stigma, on the 2016 album Wings, demonstrated an impressive vocal range that transitioned from deep chest tones to a piercing falsetto, set against a neo-soul backdrop. In 2018, he released Singularity as the comeback trailer for Love Yourself, Tear. The track, an R&B song laced with jazz chords and muted percussion, received critical praise globally, with publications like the New York Times highlighting it as one of the top tracks of the year. The accompanying solo choreography, featuring a mannequin and velvet drapes, emphasized restraint and fluid movement over athletic power, setting him apart from conventional K-pop performance tropes. Beyond group albums, Taehyung established himself as a dominant force in television soundtracks. His self-composed track, Winter Bear, and his OST contributions, such as Sweet Night for the drama Itaewon Class and Christmas Tree for Our Beloved Summer, achieved massive commercial success. Christmas Tree debuted on the Billboard Hot 100 at number 79, making it the first Korean OST track in history to enter the main U.S. singles chart. These tracks shared a quiet, acoustic minimalism that allowed his warm baritone to take center stage, stripped of heavy studio production. In September 2023, Taehyung released his debut solo album, Layover, produced in collaboration with creative director Min Hee-jin. The album was a deliberate departure from mainstream pop trends. Instead of chasing high-tempo dance tracks designed for viral short-form videos, Layover was an intimate, lo-fi collection of jazz and classic R&B tracks. Tracks like Love Me Again and Slow Dancing featured real instrumentation, including prominent flute and saxophone solos that directly referenced his childhood musical roots. Layover debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, matching the records set by his bandmates Jimin and Suga, and sold over 2 million copies in its first week according to Haneo chart data. In December 2023, Kim Taehyung enlisted for his mandatory military service. Unlike many public figures who select administrative or logistical roles, Taehyung applied for and was accepted into the Special Duty Team, SDT. a specialized counterterrorism unit under the Capital Defense Command, requiring rigorous physical qualification and tactical training. He served dutifully and was officially discharged in June 2025. Looking at Taehyung's journey, his first love was never the bright lights of Seoul or the applause of stadium crowds. It was the quiet discipline of producing a resonant sound from a brass instrument in a small room in Jeon. The farm boy who picked up a saxophone because his father advised him to learn a skill carried that same unhurried, soulful approach into an industry known for hyperspeed commercialism. He remained true to a voice that sounded like nobody else in his generation. And if Taehyung's first love was rooted in the slow, patient craft of rural life and classical instrumentation, the next member's first love was an absolute, terrifying explosion of raw talent that took over his entire life before he was even old enough to graduate middle school. Number 3, the prodigy who chose people over fame, Jungkook. In 1997, Jungkook was born in Mandeok-dong, a quiet residential neighborhood in the Buk district of Busan. As a child, his primary ambition had nothing to do with music or stage lights. He was intensely athletic, competitive, and spent his early years focused on sports, specifically badminton. Inspired by South Korean Olympic gold medalist Lee Yong-dae, young Jungkook spent hours practicing on local courts, aiming for a career in professional athletics. When he wasn't playing sports, he was drawing, gaming, or practicing taekwondo, in which he eventually earned a black belt. He possessed a rare, natural physical coordination. Whatever sport or physical movement he attempted, he mastered in a fraction of the time it took others. That athletic trajectory shifted abruptly in 2009 when he saw a television performance of Heartbreaker by G-Dragon, the leader of Big Bang. Watching a single artist command a stage with pure performance energy unlocked something new in the 12-year-old from Busan. It wasn't just about listening to music. It was about the physical mastery of performance. He decided he wanted to become a singer. In 2011, at just 13 years old, Jungkook took his first concrete step toward that goal by auditioning for the third season of Superstar K, South Korea's premier television talent competition, during its regional tryouts in Busan. He sang 2AM's ballad This Song. He did not make it onto the televised broadcast. The judges eliminated him during the preliminary rounds, judging his vocal delivery to be overly shy and unpolished, an understandable evaluation for a 13-year-old standing alone in an audition room. What happened immediately after his elimination, however, is a matter of record in the South Korean music industry. Even though he failed to advance on Superstar K, agency scouts standing outside the audition venue saw something extraordinary in his raw vocal timbre and physical proportions. 7 different entertainment agencies approached the middle school student that day, handing him business cards and offering him trainee contracts. The list of interested companies included major, highly established agencies with massive capital and proven track records, such as JYP Entertainment, Cube Entertainment, Starship Entertainment, FNC Entertainment, and TS Entertainment. For a young teenager from Busan looking for a guaranteed entry into the music industry, accepting an offer from an established power like JYP was the obvious, logical choice. Those companies had state-of-the-art facilities, extensive financial backing, and guaranteed broadcast network connections. Jungkook turned them all down. He chose Big Hit Entertainment, a small, financially struggling agency operating out of a leased office building with a small staff and zero guarantee of commercial survival. His decision came down to a single moment. When Jungkook visited Big Hit's headquarters to tour the facilities, he walked past a practice room and saw Namjoon, RM, rapping in person. Jungkook was so struck by Namjoon's lyricism, command of rhythm, and sheer presence that he decided on the spot. He wanted to train alongside that rapper. He didn't evaluate the company's bank balance or corporate pedigree. He made his choice entirely based on human respect for another artist. He moved from Busan to Seoul in 2011, leaving his family behind at age 13 to live in Big Hit's cramped dormitories. During his early months as a trainee, Jungkook suffered from extreme social anxiety and shyness. Bang Si-hyuk and the older trainees have recalled in interviews that he was so self-conscious he would wait for the other trainees to fall asleep at night before he would shower, and he barely spoke a word during vocal evaluations. His vocal coach at the time noted that if asked to sing on command, he would often burst into tears from the pressure. Recognizing that his physical performance lacked power despite his athletic background, Big Hit took a major financial risk in the summer of 2012. They sent 14-year-old Jungkook to Los Angeles, California, for a month of intensive dance training at Movement Lifestyle, a world-renowned urban dance academy. That month in Los Angeles transformed him completely. Under the instruction of top-tier American choreographers like Keone Madrid and Lando Wilkins, Jungkook was exposed to hip-hop, popping, locking, and movement control at an international level. His natural physical intelligence kicked in. He absorbed choreographic detail at a terrifying speed, returning to Korea with a completely redefined movement style. In fact, his month in LA went so well that it created an unexpected crisis for Big Hit. Jungkook fell so completely in love with street dance and choreography that he told the agency he wanted to give up becoming a singer altogether and become a professional, full-time dancer instead. It took the collective effort of the older trainees, specifically Jimin, who built a close bond with him, to convince him to return to the group and fulfill his commitment to debut as an idol. In June 2013, at 15 years old, Jungkook officially debuted as the main vocalist, lead dancer, and center of BTS. Because of his ability to excel at singing, dancing, rapping, and visual presence simultaneously, he was given the title that would follow him for the rest of his career, the Golden Magne. Due to his early debut, he had to delay his entry into high school by a year, eventually enrolling in the School of Performing Arts Seoul, SOPA, in 2014 and graduating in 2017 while already participating in international arena tours with BTS. Because he moved to Seoul at 13, Jungkook's formative identity was built entirely within the framework of BTS. In his solo track, Begin from the 2016 album Wings, he addressed this directly. Rather than writing about a romantic partner or personal ambition, Begin is an explicit tribute to the 6 older members who raised him. He wrote that he had no defined self at 15, and that his personality, morality, and artistic identity were forged entirely out of pieces of his bandmates. The emotional core of the song rests on a single statement. He can endure any physical hardship himself, but seeing his older members in pain is the one thing he cannot bear. As BTS rose to global prominence, Jungkook's position as center became the anchor of their live performances. His vocal stability while executing complex physical choreography became a benchmark across the industry. Live audio feeds from stadium tours consistently demonstrated his ability to hit clean pitch and maintain steady breath control during 2.5-hour sets. His solo trajectory proved equally formidable. In November 2022, he performed Dreamers, the official soundtrack for the 2022 FIFA World Cup, at the opening ceremony at Al Bayt Stadium in Qatar, performing alongside Qatari singer Fahd Al-Khabaisi to a global television audience numbering in the hundreds of millions. In July 2023, he released his official debut solo single, 7, featuring American rapper Latto. The track debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 1 on the Billboard Global 200, and number 1 on the Billboard Global XGL US charts simultaneously. 7 became the fastest song in Spotify history to surpass 1 billion streams, reaching the milestone in just 108 days and breaking the previous record held by Miley Cyrus's Flowers. In November 2023, he released his debut solo album, Golden, an all-English pop project featuring collaborations with producers like Andrew Watt, Circuit, and DJ Snake, along with guest vocals from Major Lazer and Jack Harlow. Golden debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and sold over 2 million copies in its first week, solidifying his status as a standalone global pop icon. In December 2023, Jungkook enlisted for mandatory military service alongside Jimin under the companion placement system, serving in the 5th Infantry Division. He completed his service honorably and was discharged in June 2025. Jungkook's first love was never the fame that 7 major agencies tried to promise him when he was 13. It was the physical pursuit of perfection, whether in a badminton court, an LA dance studio, or on a stadium stage, guided by an absolute, unwavering loyalty to the 6 older members who built him. He turned down guaranteed success with industry giants because he saw something real in a small, windowless studio in 2011. And if Jungkook's first love was a pursuit of physical excellence guided by loyalty to others, the next member's first love was something far more dark, lonely, and stubborn. A love that began in front of a broken, brown piano in a small room in Taegu and fought its way through poverty, injury, and severe mental illness. Number 2. The boy who chose a piano over a meal, Suga. In March 1993, Yoongi was born in Sonyeondan, a working-class neighborhood in the Buk district of Taegu. In his family's small home stood an old, upright brown piano. It wasn't an expensive instrument, nor was it purchased with the expectation of raising a musical prodigy. It was simply an object in the corner of a room. Yet, when Yoongi was a young child, before he understood music theory, song structure, or the commercial realities of the music business, he would sit at those keys and press them. He didn't just write about this instrument years later as a poetic metaphor. In his 2016 solo track, First Love, on BTS's Wings album, Yoongi explicitly identified that brown piano as his first love. He described how, as a small child, he was fascinated by the instrument's wooden texture and keys. He wrote about forgetting it for a period during elementary school as other interests took over, only to return to it when he was 13, the moment his life took a permanent turn toward composition. That turn, however, set off a severe, multi-year conflict within his household. Yoongi's parents had lived through periods of economic hardship in South Korea. For them, stability was the highest value a child could achieve. They wanted their son to pursue a secure profession, a civil servant, a bank employee, or a corporate worker. When Yoongi announced at age 13 that he wanted to become a music producer and lyricist, his parents opposed it completely. The opposition wasn't passive. His parents actively threw away his notebooks filled with handwritten lyrics and composition drafts. They refused to fund his music lessons or buy him equipment. In South Korean society, where parental approval heavily dictates a young person's educational and career trajectory, Yoongi was standing entirely alone. Undeterred, by the age of 13, he had taught himself MIDI composition and digital audio workstations. By 17, he had joined an underground hip-hop crew in Taegu called D-Town, performing and producing under the stage name Gloss, a direct English translation of his birth name, Yoongi, which means shine or gloss. During his late teens in Taegu, Yoongi lived in extreme financial instability. He took a part-time job at a local recording studio, not for a steady salary, but to learn how to use professional audio gear, mixing consoles, and sound engineering software. The studio owner paid him primarily in equipment access and occasional small fees for arranging tracks. This led to a daily financial calculation that Yoongi has recounted in multiple interviews. Every evening after finishing work at the studio, he had to make a choice. If he bought a 2001, approximately $1.50, bowl of jjajangmyeon, black bean noodles, for dinner, he would not have the 1,201 needed for the bus fare back to his house. If he bought the food, he had to walk 2 hours home in the dark. If he took the bus, he went hungry. More often than not, he chose the music, ate the meal, and walked the 2 hours. He composed and produced tracks for local underground artists, including 5-18-062, a song commemorating the May 18th Gwangju democratization movement, produced alongside D-Town leader Naxian. But selling tracks in Taegu's underground scene yielded almost no income. Often, buyers would take his beats and fail to pay him. In autumn 2010, Big Hit Entertainment announced their nationwide Hit It, rap, and production auditions. Yoongi entered the competition in Taegu. He placed second overall in the national final, earning a spot as a trainee and producer for the company. He packed his belongings and moved to Seoul in late 2010. When Yoongi arrived at Big Hit, he believed he was joining as a producer and pure hip-hop artist. Bang Si-hyuk initially assured him that he wouldn't need to execute intense dance routines, suggesting he would perform in a group structure similar to 1TYM, focusing primarily on sitting at a keyboard, writing beats, and delivering rap verses. As Big Hit shifted its strategy toward creating a full K-pop idol group, Yoongi found himself put through hours of rigorous, synchronized dance training alongside J-Hope and RM. The transition was physically demanding, but the financial hardship followed him to Seoul. Big Hit's financial situation in 2011 and 2012 was fragile, and trainees received minimal stipends. To pay his college tuition and daily living expenses, Yoongi took a part-time job as a motorcycle delivery driver during early morning hours, training at Big Hit by day and delivering packages at night. In late 2012, while making a delivery in rainy conditions, Yoongi was hit by a car in a hit-and-run accident. The collision crushed his shoulder and severely torn the labrum in his joint. Fearing that Big Hit management would drop him from the group if they discovered he was physically injured and unable to dance, or that he was working unauthorized part-time jobs, Yoongi kept the accident a complete secret from the company and his fellow members. He continued to execute intense group dance rehearsals for months with a dislocated, damaged shoulder joint, using his uninjured arm to support his body during floor choreography. The pain became severe enough that he eventually confessed to his bandmates and management that he had fallen down the stairs. When Big Hit executive staff finally learned the true story behind his injury and his financial struggles, the company paid his university tuition costs so he could quit the delivery job and focus entirely on recovery and training. In June 2013, he debuted as Suga, the lead rapper of BTS. Despite debuting, his shoulder condition deteriorated steadily over the next 7 years. Throughout BTS's rise to international stardom, performing back-to-back stadium shows and executing heavy choreography, Suga quietly managed chronic pain, nerve inflammation, and a limited range of motion in his left arm. He received continuous physical therapy and pain-relieving injections behind the scenes. Finally, in November 2020, after years of postponing treatment to avoid missing group schedules, he underwent comprehensive surgical repair of his left shoulder labrum, stepping away from public activities for several months to rehabilitate. Musically, Suga created a distinct artistic alter ego named August D, a combination of DT, standing for Daegu Town, and Suga, spelled backward. In August 2016, he released his self-titled debut mixtape, August D, free of charge on SoundCloud and digital platforms. The project was an unvarnished, raw accounting of his life. On tracks like The Last, he addressed topics rarely discussed openly by Korean public figures: his struggles with severe depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder, social phobia, and the psychological dislocation of moving from poverty to public scrutiny. In May 2020, he released his second mixtape, D2, featuring the title track, Daechwida, which blended traditional Korean military music instruments, Daechwida, with modern trap beats. The song debuted at number 76 on the Billboard Hot 100, while the mixtape hit number 11 on the Billboard 200, making him the first Korean solo artist to simultaneously chart on both main Billboard charts. In April 2023, he completed the trilogy with his official solo studio album, D-Day, released under the August D moniker. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, selling over 1.4 million copies globally on its first day. To support the release, he launched the August D Tour, performing 28 arena shows across the United States and Asia. The tour grossed over $57 million, setting the record for the highest-grossing concert tour by a Korean solo artist in history. Beyond his solo projects, Suga established himself as one of the Korean music industry's most sought-after producers. He produced and featured on hits for major artists, including Saran's Wine, which won Best R&B/Soul at the 2017 Melon Music Awards, IU's 8, Epic High's Sleepless in Sice Global Smash, That, and American singer Halsey's Suga's Interlude. In September 2023, due to his medical history and the permanent structural damage from his 2012 shoulder injury, Suga was assigned to fulfill his mandatory military obligation as a social service agent rather than an active duty soldier. He completed his service requirement and was officially discharged in June 2025. Suga's first love was that brown piano sitting in a quiet house in Daegu. It was an instrument he chose over food when he had only 2001 in his pocket. It was a passion he defended when his own family threw his lyrics in the trash, and a commitment he carried through a crushed shoulder on cold Seoul streets. He didn't pursue music to be celebrated. He pursued it because, for him, staying silent was never an option. And if Suga's first love was an iron-willed obsession forged through poverty, injury, and a brown piano, the final member's first love was something nobody saw coming. A quiet, completely unexpected choice by a young man who had no intention of becoming an artist at all, until a single walk across a university campus changed everything. Number 1. The actor who learned to sing from scratch, Jeon. In December 1992, Kim Seokjin was born in Gwacheon, a city in Gyeonggi province located just south of Seoul. Unlike several of his future bandmates who grew up in modest or financially strained environments, Seokjin was raised in a stable, comfortable household. His father was the CEO of a successful commercial manufacturing company that supplied components to major German corporations. Growing up, Seokjin had access to resources, traveled internationally with his family, and initially envisioned a career in traditional business or media. In middle school, he aimed to become a newspaper journalist or a corporate executive, following the path established by his father. That trajectory shifted completely during his senior year of high school because of a single television drama. Seokjin watched the 2009 historical drama Queen Seondeok, which aired on MBC. Specifically, he was mesmerized by the performance of actor Kim Nam-gil, who played the complex, morally gray character Bidem. Watching Kim Nam-gil portray deep emotional conflict on screen affected Seokjin in a way no academic subject or business prospect ever had. He realized that an actor possessed the power to move complete strangers to tears, to make people reflect on their own lives simply through facial expression, voice tone, and body language. That was his first love, acting and dramatic storytelling. He decided he wanted to become a professional actor. In South Korea, pursuing acting at a prestigious university requires navigating an extraordinarily competitive examination process. Seokjin applied to Konkuk University's Department of Film and Acting, one of the top theatrical programs in the country. The admission ratio for the department that year was approximately 200 to 1, with thousands of applicants vying for a handful of available seats. Seokjin passed both the academic examinations and the rigorous practical acting auditions, securing his admission in early 2011. His goal was clear: study film, master classical theater techniques, and become a dramatic actor in Korean television and cinema. However, years before entering Konkuk University, Seokjin had actually experienced a strange encounter with the music industry that he rejected. When he was in middle school, a talent recruiter from SM Entertainment, one of South Korea's largest and most powerful entertainment conglomerates, spotted him walking down the street and tried to recruit him for an audition. Believing the recruiter was a street scammer trying to trick him, the young Seokjin ran away and ignored the offer. Had he accepted that initial approach, the history of modern pop music would look radically different. The real turning point occurred in early 2011, shortly after he began his freshman year at Konkuk University. Seokjin was stepping off a public bus on his way to attend morning classes on the Konkuk campus. A talent scout from Big Hit Entertainment, who had been sitting on the same bus, spotted him, hurried off the vehicle behind him, and stopped him on the sidewalk. The scout explained that Big Hit was assembling a new hip-hop idol group and urged him to come to the agency for an audition. Seokjin hesitated. He had no formal training in singing. He had never taken a dance lesson in his life. His musical knowledge was limited to casual listening, and his heart was set on acting. Nevertheless, Big Hit convinced him that joining the agency could serve as a stepping stone toward an acting career, suggesting that many idols eventually transitioned into television and film. He agreed to audition, passed, and signed a trainee contract with Big Hit in 2011. When Seokjin entered Big Hit's practice rooms, he faced a reality that was daunting by any technical standard. He was placed in a dorm with trainees who were vastly more experienced in music and performance. Min Yoongi had been producing beats for years. Kim Namjoon was an established underground rapper. Jung Hoseok was a nationally awarded street dancer. Park Jimin was the top modern dance student at Busan Arts High. And Jungkook was a 14-year-old physical prodigy. Seokjin was starting from absolute zero. He had no vocal technique, no pitch control, no sense of stage performance, and zero muscle memory for complex choreography. In the early months of training, he struggled significantly to keep up with the physical demands of idol routines. Choreographers and vocal coaches had to break down every movement and note for him from the ground up. Faced with this massive skill gap, Seokjin relied on an intense, quiet work ethic. He would arrive at the practice studios hours before the scheduled group sessions and remain late into the night after the other trainees had gone to sleep. He repeatedly drilled dance steps in front of the studio mirrors, recording himself on his phone to analyze his posture frame by frame. Vocal coaches who worked with Big Hit during that period noted that Seokjin was relentless. If he struggled with a specific vocal transition or pitch hold, he would repeat the segment hundreds of times until his vocal cords physically memorized the placement. In June 2013, he debuted as the sub-vocalist and visual center of BTS. Over the next decade, Seokjin transformed his vocal capability from a complete baseline zero into one of the most reliable belting tenor voices in modern pop music. While his early lines in BTS's hip-hop heavy tracks were minimal, as the group's musical style expanded into pop, rock, and orchestral ballads, his wide vocal range became central to their arrangements. His solo tracks within BTS albums documented this technical evolution clearly. On the 2016 album Wings, his solo track, Awake, which he co-wrote, addressed his early feelings of inadequacy compared to his bandmates, set against a sweeping orchestral arrangement that showcased his stable chest-to-head voice transitions. In 2018, for the album Love Yourself, Seokjin recorded Epiphany. The track, an alternative rock ballad centered on self-acceptance, featured a soaring chorus that required him to sustain high notes with raw power. During BTS's Love Yourself World Tour, his live solo performance of Epiphany, seated at a piano on stadium stages before rising to belt the final chorus, became one of the emotional peaks of their concert set list, drawing critical praise from international music outlets for its vocal control and dramatic delivery. In February 2020, on Map of the Soul 7, he released Moon, an upbeat pop-rock track dedicated to BTS's fanbase, ARMY, in which he metaphorically described himself as a moon orbiting the Earth. Rolling Stone ranked Moon as the 5th greatest boy band song of all time in their 2020 historical ranking, praising its arrangement and vocal delivery. In October 2022, prior to fulfilling his military obligation, Seokjin released his official debut solo single, The Astronaut, co-written with the British rock band Coldplay. The pop-rock single debuted at number 51 on the Billboard Hot 100 and sold over 1 million copies in South Korea, making him a million-selling solo artist. On December 13, 2022, Kim Seokjin became the first member of BTS to enlist for mandatory military service. He was assigned to the 5th Infantry Division Recruit Training Center in Yongkyeon, Gyeonggi Province. Because of his exceptional discipline, physical performance, and leadership during basic training, he was selected to serve as an assistant instructor, Jogyo, at the training center for the remainder of his service, a position reserved for soldiers who demonstrate superior physical and tactical aptitude. He completed his 18-month active duty service honorably and was officially discharged on June 12, 2024. Immediately following his release, Seokjin resumed public activities. In July 2024, he was chosen as an official torchbearer representing South Korea for the 2024 Paris Summer Olympics, carrying the Olympic flame through the streets of Paris near the Louvre Museum amidst massive international media coverage. In November 2024, he released his debut solo studio album, Happy, an exploration of classic rockabilly, pop rock, and band sounds that highlighted his vocal maturity and bright performance style. Kim Seokjin's first love was dramatic storytelling, the art of moving an audience through emotional truth. He didn't enter the music industry as a trained singer or a child prodigy. He entered as a college student studying theater who stepped off a bus at the right moment. By applying an unyielding work ethic to an art form he knew nothing about, he built a vocal capability that reached millions across stadium floors worldwide. When you look at the complete picture of BTS, their global impact wasn't built on a corporate formula or synthetic luck. It was forged by 7 individuals who each carried a distinct first love into a single room. A street dancer from Gwangju, an intellectual obsessed with words, a contemporary dancer from Busan, a farm boy with a saxophone, an athlete driven by loyalty, a producer who chose a piano over a meal, and an actor who learned to sing from scratch. They didn't just build a group. They built an undeniable legacy out of 7 different lives that refused to give up on what first made their hearts beat. 11:28 a.m. 7 members. 7 completely different origins. A street dancer from Gwangju who had to teach himself to rap. A genius from Ilsan who traded a guaranteed academic future for a microphone. A contemporary dancer from Busan who pushed his body past its breaking point chasing perfection. A farm boy from Jeochang who walked into an audition he never planned to take. A teenager from Busan who turned down 7 major agencies because he saw one rapper rehearsing through a practice room door. A producer from Daegu who chose a brown piano over a hot meal every single night. And an acting student from Gwacheon who stepped off a bus with 0 musical ability and built his voice from nothing. None of them were manufactured. None of them were assembled from a corporate checklist. Each one carried a first love into that big hit building. Something deeply personal, something formed long before the world knew their names, and refused to let it go, no matter what the industry demanded. That's the part the charts and records will never capture. BTS didn't become the biggest group on the planet because 7 talented people were placed in a room together. They became undeniable because 7 people who had already been broken, tested, and reshaped by something they loved were willing to do it all over again, together. Their first loves didn't disappear when the stadium lights turned on. Those loves became the foundation underneath every note, every lyric, every performance. And that is something no algorithm, no label, and no amount of marketing budget can replicate.